Yeah, I'd like to go back to D-Day. When you were on the landing craft, what were you thinking? What was it like being on the landing craft and leading all up to that?
There's a lot of little sounds, and the machine gun fire was hitting on the top. You had to keep your head down because you hear the pop, 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 pop on the side of the boat.
In September of 1939, as an aggressive and powerful Nazi Germany invaded the borders of Poland, many nations began mobilizing for an inevitable global war. Although unprepared, Canada was among those to declare war on Germany and began drafting many young men into service, including Jim Parks of Winnipeg, Manitoba.
I was just a young guy. I started off with the cadets in the early 30s, and as war broke out, I joined the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders. We thought war was an adventurous thing, although we also knew it wasn't adventurous, but you also want to be part of it. I spent the winter training in Fort Osborne Barracks, and then the spring come, the 3rd Division was going overseas, so they came along and they took 60 people away, 20 from each regiment. And actually I was on guard duty, but my brother who was there, he put my name on the list. And so when I come off guard duty, he said, "You got a 48-hour pass." Oh, I said, "Is that right?" He said, "Yeah, it's embarkation leave. You're now at Winnipeg Rifles. You'll go down to Camp B Bird on Monday." So that's how I ended up going to Winnipeg Rifles. We went overseas on a banana boat called the SS Orbita. So we landed in Liverpool about the 16th of September, 1941. And we got on a train and we went from Liverpool down to Camp Aldershot. We did a lot of training there, a lot of what they call anti-invasion exercises, because we're stationed along the coast of England. And at that time, there was always a threat the Germans might invade. Then we went to Scotland in 1943 to do salt landing.
After years of preparation, the Allies were ready to turn the tide of the war, selecting Normandy Beach as their gateway towards victory. This short stretch of French coast was divided into 5 different beaches. Jim and the Royal Winnipeg Rifles would land on Juno Beach with the rest of the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division. For many, this baptism by fire was their first and last combat experience.
There's a lot of little sounds, and the machine gun fire was hitting on the top. You had to keep your head down because you hear the pop, 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 pop on the side of the boat. There was a big thump. We hit a mine. We hit by a 75 millimeter. The fellow that was he was low down the ramp. He was all pretty well wounded. We dropped us in the water too deep. Our sergeant said, "The water's too deep. We can't go in." And they were ordered off anyway, but we knew what was happening, so I undid my web equipment. So once we hit the water, I could be free to swim. Because as soon as we hit the water, we went under the water, about 8 or 9 feet of water. And of course, the waves coming in, a bit rough. We lost everything. And we got into shore, and it was pretty rough going. But the infantry companies had been coming in, and a few people were wounded on the beach, and I plopped beside Corporal Scaife. I knew this Corporal Scaife. He was from out west in Saskatchewan, and he was mortally wounded. So I took his Sten gun, because I lost everything, and I rolled him over and got a small pack. And then I got involved with onto the beach until the rest of our platoon come in.
The first assault wave suffered tremendous casualties, with nearly 50% of the Canadian soldiers killed or wounded. But a relentless wave of some 14,000 troops continued to pour in. By the end of the day, the beach had been won, and the 3rd Infantry moved inland.
After you got off the beach, where it was pretty messy, for a while in it was very quiet. And we got into a little village called Puteaux, We were there, and then the 8th of June, the 12th SS Armored Division. Anything SS are what they call the mean guys, or Nazis, eh? They were up against us. They were the ones that overran us on Puteaux. That was pretty hectic for a couple of days, and getting overrun like that. You didn't know where the heck they were. They'd pop up, and you'd fire, and they'd be gone. They'd fire, and you'd be gone. So we were in this Virgeray farm, and we were there sort of building up, and we got reinforcements. We got about 400 reinforcements the first night. Canadian Scottish made what they call a counterattack and took over all the land that we lost. Yeah, Carpiquet that was a nasty place, yeah. There'd be a lot of dogfights. There's Messerschmitts that come over and strafe. They would come over and they'd drop what they call a butterfly bomb. It had wings on it. And when they drop it, it would float. And they'd float around. You wouldn't hear them coming. And they would land and explode. So they'd come over and drop, and you'd hear the explosions here and there. You're just hoping they wouldn't be dropping over where you are, because you couldn't hear them or see them until they actually landed and exploded. And the Germans were well entrenched. They had the 88s. The 88s was the best cannon on any side in World War II. I remember this one time, I was going into looking for cover. I got caught out in the open. I ran, and I got my foot on the windowsill and ducked, and the shell landed right behind me and blew me through the window. Next thing I remember, I was sitting at the regimental aid post with a cup of tea in my hand. So by the time they dragged me out, they put me in one of these jeeps with a stretcher on. It took me back to the regimental aid post, which should be a mile and a half behind at least. And here I am sitting with a keep. How in the hell did I get here? Oh yeah, Jack was my brother. He was in the same platoon. They had to go back in with his Bren gun carrier into the center of town. And a grenade landed on my brother's lap, a potato masher. He froze, and Butch reached over. He grabbed the grenade, he tossed it over the side. The German soldier was standing in the doorway, and it landed right where the German soldier was.
Jim and his brother were lucky to be alive, but as the Third moved deeper into France, casualties continued to mount.
We end up with 156 casualties on the beach, that's killed and wounded. Over that 3 or 4 days, another 80 or 90 wounded were killed. Things were a bit quiet, and I remember they put us back in a place called Bray, and I was along the ditch. And my brother said to me, come along the ditch, and he says, Jim, there's a friend of yours from school just down the ditch, Izzy Freeman. Izzy Freeman and I'd been in school together. When I first met him, our school burned down in Winnipeg, and they took us to David Livingston School. And the first guy I met was Izzy Freeman. He come up to me and he bumped me and he said, what are you guys doing here? He started being a bit of a bully. And I bumped him back and I said, our school burned down, we're supposed to be here. And so we got to be good friends, played in the same baseball team. And like I say, I never saw him again after that time until the 8th of July. A shell hit his trench. Him and the other guy were both killed. So I'd seen him the day before, and he was killed by 88 the next day. So this happened quite often. So.
By the end of August 1944, the Battle of Normandy was declared an Allied victory, and the road to Germany seemed wide open. Jim and the Winnipeg Rifles continued north in an attempt to liberate Holland from Hitler's grasp. But in order to keep a steady flow of supplies and troops into the Netherlands, the German-held port of Antwerp would need to be taken, forcing the 3rd Canadian Infantry into the Battle of the Scheldt.
The Battle of the Scheldt, you got to remember, there's a lot of water, a lot of dikes, So in order to take cover from the enemy's fire, you had to dig in the sides of the dike. And the thing is, the infantry were more or less on their own because the tanks couldn't get into support because they'd be silhouetted on the dikes and they could be picked off. So at the best they could, they might sight themselves someplace where they could fire on targets. They could only fire a few shots and get out of there. But they did a lot of support for us that way. And when the weather was clear, we had a lot of what they call the RAF. They come over with the Typhoons and the Spitfires, and they had what they call rockets. And we always used to be glad to see them because one rocket, if it hit a tank, it could knock a tank out. But we were always so happy to see we call them Tiffies, the Typhoons, that come over to fire and support.
After 2 weeks, the Battle of the Scheldt came to an end, and the liberation of Holland was underway. Fighting would continue throughout the country until May of 1945. Elsewhere in Europe, Hitler's once powerful armed forces continued to crumble, and German soldiers surrendered in droves. On April 30th, a defeated and humiliated Adolf Hitler took his own life. And on the 8th of May, Germany finally surrendered. The war in Europe was over. To this day, Jim recalls with great pride the joy and gratitude of the people of Holland, newly liberated by their Canadian allies.
Once you got into Holland and got into liberation, the people, you could tell the people were so grateful because they'd been under the thumb for 4 years. And they are thankful, very thankful. I've been back there a few times, and it's even now you could tell how thankful they are for the Canadians. The Canadians are so well expected over there. So we've been back several times on organized trips, and we're treated like kings and queens. It's really nice.
So if you could say one thing to communicate to the younger generation.
So young people, you have to remember your values. Your values are composed of what you're being a citizen, the country you're in, the family, the neighborhood you're at, and the life that you love. And you got to respect that. You want to enjoy it, you got to protect it. You don't get that for nothing. You got to earn it day by day. You may not think so, but day by day you got to earn it. And you got to be ready and available if you're called to defend it. Just remember, you're sitting back and you're enjoying it, but it comes at a cost. The cost is you must remember to protect it in any way you can. That's it.
Hi everyone, I'm Josh from Memoirs of World War II, and I just want to say thank you for watching this episode. Our goal is to capture as many World War II veteran stories as we can from all over the world, but we can't do it alone. If you'd like to help us in this mission, consider supporting us through Patreon and check out our website memoirsofworldwar2.com for more information. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. Again, we want to thank you for your support, and thanks for watching.